The question being asked by Number 10 and journalists alike seems to be whether it's possible for a Brexiteer such as myself, half French, une femme qui adore l'Europe, mais pas tellement l'Union européenne, will be able to support the PM's withdrawal agreement. I can translate it: a woman who loves Europe, but not so much the European Union. Will be able to support the PM's withdrawal agreement political declaration in their current form. As a pragmatist, I appreciate that perfection is often the enemy of the good. In fact, the perfectionists in my family, of which there are two, I am often heard to say, usually in relation to their homework procrastination, done is better than perfect. And that philosophy holds true with any agreement with the EU to assist as smooth a Brexit as possible. But, Mr. Speaker, the PM's unequivocal determination to ensure the status of EU citizens in the UK, including my mother, as it happens, is absolutely right. And it's good to see the drip feed of confirmation over the last few weeks that other EU countries are also putting through legislation to ensure that mutual status for British citizens living in their countries, in case we do indeed have to leave on the 29th of March in a no-deal environment. But as the Home Secretary has had to demonstrate in the last couple of weeks, the challenges of illegal migration, what constitutes a refugee rather than an economic migrant, what our policy choices which are supported by our electorate are and can be going forwards, these are all questions which have been very much part of the Brexit debate conversation. And the reason why so many voted Brexit was in part in order to feel that they have a more direct line for their views and voting power to be heard in this policy area, not to close the door, but to determine it for ourselves. But today I'd really just like to highlight one area of concern beyond the question of the backstop, which my honourable friend, the member for, I'm going to get it wrong, thank you, which is my concern over the wider defence and security canvas. I am profoundly concerned that, as the leading military European nation in NATO, as in other areas of the withdrawal agreement and the political declaration, the EU's intention is to reduce our ability as a third country to act independently in the defence arena and to maintain that position and commitment that we have now. Mr. Speaker, I believe that we must look very closely at the proposed relationship with the EU post-Brexit, which the Prime Minister is planning to negotiate, and consider whether we should be accepting what is clearly beneficial to the EU if it would have significant detriment to the UK, our defence industry, control of our own defence and security forces, and how we could independently and with sovereign capability ensure we can decide what we do for our economic and constituent security in the decades ahead. I am concerned by the short-termist tone of ministers and the government that there must be no disruption to daily life, but in so doing, the propositions set forwards everywhere leave us with long-term risk of not having really Brexited to regain our freedom of choice and indeed responsibility for our actions. Brexit means having nowhere to hide and no one else to blame. Mr. Speaker, the language of the political declaration is for flexible and scalable cooperation to protect from threats, to work closely at bilateral levels and within international organisations, which all sounds good. But then the language turns to combined efforts with the EU, where we already have a powerful and effective combined effort network framework in NATO, with EU countries wrapped up in that security blanket already. The most recent treaty published this week between France and Germany, that underlying reason for the EU to stop battles between those two nations and try to maintain peace in Europe after such destructive wars last century, highlights France's continuing need to reassert their position vis-à-vis Germany. And indeed, yesterday, the German Foreign Minister talked again of how the EU army is becoming a reality. This distracts both military effort, financial investment, and indeed from effective outcomes for all our allies throughout NATO. And I believe we must stand firm in reasserting and driving through policy which ensures NATO can remain the cooperative organisation which effectively provides security protection through Article 5. The problems the Prime Minister has agreed to with the EU simply risk the freedom to protect our defence industry as we believe necessary and beneficial. So, Mr. Speaker, I have remained profoundly concerned that proposals in the political declaration, off the back of the withdrawal agreement, hold unacceptable risk, and it's always that question of balance of risk to the United Kingdom's defence and security, flexibility and autonomy, and which reduces the benefits for UK plc. Being a global maritime trading nation for the last 400 years, we should be able to bring once more that back as our focus as we go forwards to becoming an independent country once again. Yeah.